Classic Historical Tales presents The Last Reich, Hitler in Argentina, 1945 to 1970. Episode 5, Part 6, The Fourth Reich's Grand Illusions. In the years after Hitler's death, Bormann poured the last of his strength into what he believed would be his true legacy, the ideological rebirth of the Reich. Without uniforms, without territories, without parades. This time, it would be an economic and cultural empire. To this end, he used the sprawling network of Die Spinne, Skorzeny mercenaries, and sympathetic industrialists in Franco's Spain. He called it the Foundation. Its aims were sweeping: to fund schools in rural Argentina and Paraguay where German language and values would be taught, to endow front companies that would acquire influence over media and publishing, to create an elite cadre of German-Argentine businessmen who could one day steer policy. Bormann did not expect to reclaim Europe. He expected to build something more subtle and enduring, a cultural power base that would survive beyond the lifetimes of the men who had built it. In secret memoranda, he referred to this as Die Erbschaft, the inheritance. Some of the Foundation's initiatives were wildly ambitious. One proposal envisioned purchasing tracts of undeveloped land in Paraguay to establish an autonomous community, a kind of New Bavaria, complete with schools, hospitals, and industrial facilities. Others were more insidious: the financing of far-right political parties in Bolivia and Chile, with the hope that these regimes would be more hospitable to German influence. But reality kept intervening. Latin America in the 1960s and 70s was not stable. Governments rose and fell, currencies collapsed, American intelligence tightened its grip, and the men who had fled Europe were growing old. Part 7, The Dream Unravels. By 1973, the year after Bormann's planted bones were discovered in Berlin, the Fourth Reich was little more than a patchwork of isolated enclaves. The grand vision of a new empire, whether cultural or economic, was unraveling. Several factors doomed it. Generational change. The sons and daughters of German settlers were increasingly assimilated. They spoke Spanish as their first language, they married locals, they had little appetite for a mythology of lost grandeur. International scrutiny. The Eichmann trial in Israel had awakened the world's attention. Journalists, historians, and Nazi hunters scoured Argentina and Paraguay. Each year made it harder to maintain the illusion of invisibility. Internal rivalries. Skorzeny and other intermediaries resented Bormann's absolute control. Petty jealousies and betrayals festered. More than once, entire accounts vanished into offshore tax havens. Economic reality. The investments that had once multiplied in the post-war boom began to stagnate. Inflation, currency devaluations, and political upheavals destroyed fortunes overnight. By the late 1970s, the web Bormann had woven was frayed to the point of collapse. Some cells continued in Spain, fronting as antique dealers or engineering consultants. Others dissolved into obscurity. And the secret that had once kept all men loyal, Hitler's survival, had long since ceased to inspire fear or devotion. Part 8. The Last True Believers. Even as the structure fell apart, a few men refused to accept defeat. One of them was Kurt Dorschner, a former SS logistics officer who had managed warehouses in southern Chile. In a letter to a colleague in Madrid, he lamented, "All our efforts, all the gold, all the years, it ends like this. No monument, no redemption." Another was Hans Ulrich Rudel, the Luftwaffe ace who had become a minor celebrity among neo-Nazi circles in Latin America. He continued to travel, give lectures, and try to rally support. But by the 1980s, the audiences were sparse, the money was drying up, the mood was resignation. As for Skorzeny, he spent his final years in Spain, boasting of past exploits to sympathetic journalists. He died in 1975, still denying the true extent of his involvement with Bormann's operations. By then, the myth had begun to curdle. The Fourth Reich was not a phoenix awaiting rebirth. It was a mausoleum. Part 9. The Questions That Never Died. After Bormann's purported remains were found, West German authorities closed their files. Officially, the matter was settled. But questions continued to swirl. Why had the soil clinging to the bones contained South American minerals? Why did the belt buckle and the buttons show chemical treatments unknown in 1945 Berlin? How could a body supposedly buried hastily under Soviet fire remain so well preserved? Speculative theories proliferated. That D. Spin, under orders from Bormann's lieutenants, retrieved his body from Paraguay and staged the Berlin burial. That the Spanish branch of the network, using Scorzini's contacts, bribed forensic experts to confirm the identity. That the discovery was timed to coincide with a final reallocation of the Foundation's assets, so no further legal claims could be made. In a 1981 investigative series by the German magazine Stern, a forensic analyst who reviewed the evidence admitted there are inconsistencies, but no government wants to reopen the question. Bormann's ultimate victory was not escape, nor triumph, nor vengeance. It was ambiguity. Part 10. The End of the Reich's Ghost. By 1980, most of Bormann's operations were defunct or dormant. The schools he had funded in Paraguay closed from lack of interest. The companies he had set up in Argentina collapsed in the debt crisis. The Fourth Reich had no heirs, no ideology that resonated with modernity. Historians later concluded that the entire enterprise was doomed from the start, not because it lacked money, but because it lacked meaning. The men who had fled to South America carried their crimes like shadows, but their children were not interested in perpetuating a legacy of hate. One of Bormann's own grandsons, born in Asuncion, became an agricultural scientist, never joining any political movement. By the time the Berlin Wall fell, the last embers of Bormann's dream had turned to cold ash. If there is a lesson in Bormann's story, it is this: power built on fear must eventually cannibalize itself. When Bormann died in 1971, he took with him 1,000 secrets. The money scattered. The loyalists grew old, the myth decayed, and the final irony was that he, the ultimate bureaucrat, could not administer his own legacy beyond the end of his life. This concludes The Last Reich. Stay tuned to Classic Historical Tales for more deep dives into history, coming soon.